innocent. He was, not guilty. And the person he was talking to had no idea that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't even shoot a black person. He thought Kyle Rittenhouse. He's like, wait a minute, hold up, Kyle Rittenhouse. So everybody he shot was white. He was like, yeah. He didn't even know, and my boy was like, dog, it's crazy that you don't even know that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't even shoot a black person. And all you have to do is literally go on the internet and Google the freaking video. He was shot at, he was chased down, he was hit with a skateboard. I mean, dog, how do you not know that? He didn't know.
He should have just stayed home. He should have just stayed. Why is he out there in those streets? He should have stayed home. Like they get so upset that everybody doesn't act like a slave like them. Like, how dare you defend your community from people trying to destroy it? Like,
isn't that where the term Karen comes from?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't like
no,
him.
like seriously though, isn't that like, why don't you just mind your own business? Like, it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Karens are more people who are expecting some like special treatment, like usually one-to-one setting. Like,
okay.
Yeah, not the I'm gonna defend my community type of thing. But no, he's just being privileged because he thinks he can just go help and change things. That's ridiculous. I mean, Amazing. He's like a young man. What else is he supposed to do? To stay at home?
Doesn't he have like millions of followers on like Twitter now?
Yeah, he does.
Good for him.
Yeah. Right. Good for you.
Okay, and Chad, before you get into like the topics, I just want to say that thanks again, because the Monarch programming clip you just showed me is literally going to be my obsession for the rest of the month. And I just want to read out: Monarch programming is a method of mind control used by numerous organizations for covert purposes. It's a continuation of the project MK Ultra. They're literally telling you what they're doing. Literally.
Right.
It is so scary. And they're just sitting there. Like, why do we have to deal with this? It's like really embarrassing.
Not even asking any serious questions. The panel, it just, sad.
I wonder if white girls can join too.
It's a good question.
What?
I wonder if white girls can join too.
No, it's for women of color only. Because if the white girl joins, they're all going to freak out because they're going to just be staring at her and her beautiful hair. And every time she talks, they're going to be, oh, that's from your place. Oh, they'll be doing that. They'll be doing that the whole time. So,
that's crazy. No, but you're right though. No, I mean, that's exactly. I mean, but the thing is like, she would be a token, obviously.
Yeah.
And she would be like the punching bag of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, she would be used for a specific purpose to kind of like, like the hype man for these young black girls to make them feel good about
to be
themselves.
Like they're perfect. Yeah, it would be like that Dave Chappelle skit where it was The Real World. And it was all black people. And, Charlie Murphy had just gotten out of prison. and they had the white boy from Montana come in. He was like, hey, guys.
His name was Chad, by the way.
Huh?
His name was Chad, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And he was just traumatized, like, beyond.
Did he get stabbed or something by?
Yeah, he got stabbed. He was assaulted. Multiple times, and his girlfriend was like taken in front of him. Yeah, it was bad.
Do you guys think that the Dave Chappelle show holds up? By the way,
I think so. I think it's funny.
Okay. No, I'm saying like I've heard a number of people say that they went back and tried to watch the Chappelle show, and they don't find themselves laughing as hard as they were whenever it was like an active season. If that makes sense.
It was so controversial back then. But yeah.
I don't know. I haven't gone back and watched the Chappelle show, since however when it stopped, when it stopped airing. It's been years and years since I've seen it. I will say, like, I had that same effect when I watched a couple of years ago, like when they brought In Living Color back on like BET or
Oh,
whatever it
gotcha.
was, and they started airing like the old episodes of In Living Color,
Mhm.
and it wasn't as funny as it was in the early '90s. It didn't.
Mm.
Mm.
It didn't hold up. It didn't hold
David
up.
Allen Greer is, I don't know. David Allen Greer to me is like
Yeah,
funny,
yeah.
just
David, I
period.
agree. I mean, it was it was like some
Yeah.
parts, you know what I'm saying, but it just wasn't. It wasn't as funny as I remembered it being.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was some comedy like it's just like timeless though. You know.
I
Then
didn't even know we were live, guys. Apparently,
Yeah,
we're
oh,
we're
live right
yeah.
now.
live.
Oh,
I had
okay.
no
All
idea.
right.
um. So anyway, I hope we're not chopping up or anything. The unfortunate thing about using Zoom is that I can't see the comments on my end unless I'm actually watching the YouTube live stream.
Oh yeah.
Whereas with the other program I was using, I can actually see the comments in real time. So, but I'll figure that out as we go. So you were saying, Layla, that so you didn't even know that the radical monarchs existed.
No, I did not know they existed. If they did, I would have already been talking about them a lot because this is like honestly in my fantasy, I could do the same thing, but not MK Ultra. Not like I would
Yeah.
want the same sort of we are going to be funded, we're going to be targeting children. Like hell, get your 3-year-olds over here. Come on. Let's not go into slavery. Repeat after me. That's like the baseline. Please.
Yeah.
Just it makes such a lasting impact, and it's so important, and the visuals and all of it, it's just like looking at their Instagram, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I didn't know
Instagram.
about them.
Yeah, Chad, you think you may want to play the clip again because I know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, just because I know the last stream was bad and I think you deleted it. May want to show the viewing public that clip one more time.
I know
But
that would
especially if you're going to keep this live up on your page, you might want to.
watch next clip. I'm gonna infiltrate them. You'll be like, is that Layla?
You
I'm standing
should.
there like,
You should. I
yeah.
don't know if any of you guys are into like Louder with Crowder, but he did
Yeah.
something similar with Not Gay Jared, where they went into like some radical kind of like union protest group, and they registered as like non-binary something or another. It was actually pretty funny.
Yeah,
I
I
haven't
remember that.
watched him in a long time, but what'd you say?
So yeah, I remember that. And wasn't he trying to like say like he was a computer or something crazy like that? I'm a non something. I don't know. I think yeah.
No, you should totally do something like that, Layla, with the radical monarchs,
Yeah.
where you identify first and foremost as a 7-year-old
Oh
Latino
yes,
woman
I'm trans
or girl.
ages. Yes, I'm trans ages. And I'm everything as a woman of color, as a person of color. God,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
so annoying.
Yeah. I mean the
And
way
just get all the inside scoop.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Try to get to the bottom of where their funding's coming from.
I can tell you George Soros. God.
Yeah, exactly. So let me see. So basically, I'm not gonna. Well, I guess I could.
Just play the clip, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You
I'll
want
play
to
it.
see it?
Cool.
It's up to you guys. I'm chilling, man.
No,
I don't have to work.
people need to see this. I know seeing it once is never enough.
Okay. So let's see here. There it is. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, I remember when I saw that for the first time last year. I was just in utter shock. Just with how shameless they were.
Literally MK Ultra. Literally. Like there's no gray area. And you can't tell me she didn't know what that meant. She knows what that meant. It's the first thing on Google.
Remember and honor his life, legacy, and his fight for peace, justice, and equality for all.
Yes. So what's interesting about that, Chuck, because you made a comment to this earlier when we were live about how this is all in commemoration of Martin Luther King Day. And, to the conservatives, the Black conservatives, the conscious conservatives, the white conservatives, everyone who are embattled in this tug of war between the left, themselves and the left, and trying to lay claim to the legacy of Martin Luther King, insisting like, no, Martin Luther King was a Republican, he was a conservative, he'd be rolling over in his grave if he saw what's going on in America today with Black Lives Matter. Like, for all those people who insist on that, what then do you do with what you and I had talked about in previous lives, where you take Martin Luther King's very own language, where he's subscribing to socialism, to Marxism, where he's talking about his desire for a mass redistribution of wealth. What then do you do with that? Do you just ignore it? Do you pretend that it didn't happen? And when we can point to the exact quotations that came from his mouth, where you can talk to or find interviews. I've done this on my own Instagram page, where you have people who were close to Martin Luther King who said, well, yeah, he would talk about his Marxist sentiments in private, but he knew not to do it in public because he knew that he would, in a sense, prove folks like McCarthy right. And so, he was very intelligent in terms of concealing before the public his Marxist sympathies. And it helped that he had the entirety of the mainstream media who fawned over him and pretended that he was the moral leader of the 1960s. Hell, the moral leader of the 20th century in general. Like they built this kind of bigger than life mythology of Martin Luther King. And rather than clinging to our conservative values and acknowledging the fact that Martin Luther King does not fit that, what conservatives do instead is they adopt the heroes that the left say should be our heroes. What say you?
Nah, man, you're right. You're absolutely right. Nah, I mean, I think of not just Dr. Martin Luther King. I see conservatives trying to tug at the legacy also of Malcolm X, and there are others, but to your point, Chad, instead of clinging to our principles and staying true and having the courage to rightfully criticize anyone or anything that runs contrary to that, what we try to do is adopt the heroes that the left tells us, or perhaps better yet, solely for the purpose of, I guess, throwing it in the faces of our political adversaries. We attempt to say, hi, see that guy you like over there? See, he's more like us than he is like you.
Yeah.
So there's this one-upsmanship going on instead of folks actually paying attention to the facts. Like you said it, Dr. King would he would tell his close confidants not to use certain language like socialist and democratic socialists and Marxists in public, because he didn't, he knew what that would do to his image. But he was perfectly fine with that sort of language being bandied about in private. He considered himself to be a so-called democratic socialist. And as a matter of fact,
by the way, Chuck, real quick, we can't see your entire face, so I don't know if that. Yeah.
I can't, because I can't see. Oh, there I go. So yeah, and also, and then see, this is another thing too. This was very a tactic that that the radicals would use. They knew that they only needed about 5 or 10% of well-organized individuals within any given movement to drive the movement toward their desired end, without the majority of the people involved knowing exactly what was going on. They were constantly, and Chad, I know, you told me before, you said no, Dr. King knew exactly what he was doing. and what he was a part of. But and to that, you're right. But I just want people to recognize and realize that Dr. Martin Luther King and others were recruited to come in and be a part of movements that that were in fact behind the scenes being controlled by foreigners, by our enemies abroad. And Dr. King was one of the key figures. He was, as a matter of fact, in 1967, Dr. King was recruited to participate in what became known as Vietnam Week. And there was a string of about 100 or so organizations that were all cobbled together to create all manner of instability in the United States in an attempt to destroy our two-party system or our system of constitutional governance in favor of something more totalitarian, because out of the rubble that would have been created by way of such instability, the United States could be successfully Sovietized. And, these are the words from men and women who participated in this international conspiracy. And Dr. King was one of the key figures who was out front that they wanted to use and recruit, so that to put out there the error in American culture, the culture of activism and change and civil this and civil that, but all the while, they were pushing us toward tyranny.
Exactly.
And, yeah, Dr. King was a stooge for that, along with many others in this realm, in the entertainment realm. I mean, reporters, but yeah, especially entertainment figures. I can name a bunch of them, and I may get to that later or down the line. But yeah, people don't understand how deep this is, and how vast this conspiracy is, and how long it's been going on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So this show is called The Real. I didn't even know this was a thing. I mean, I see some of their clips sometimes on social media, but it's definitely produced much like, The View or some of these other daytime television shows. So this did air on daytime television. Give each other a hug part is very cringy. Or is it just me?
No, you're right.
I think they're all gross. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mind you, isn't that what do you call it? I don't know her name, Layla. Help me out. Isn't Young Jeezy the rapper?
Yeah, that's his lady,
Okay.
She got
Okay.
herself a mixed race baby now. Okay, hug. Yes, everybody's great. Little soldiers. Who wants to bet? Mom's gonna be like, I'm just not getting enough attention. Okay.
What'd you say?
They're gonna trans the little girl in red because the mom's gonna be like, I'm not getting enough attention. Okay.
Yeah.
I need you to go ahead and go be trans.
I can
you.
totally see that happening. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, there's evidence of this happening already. I think this lady in purple is this girl's mom.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's going to grow up to be a strong black woman.
Strong. Strong. Oh God.
They're all decked out with their badges and what have you.
And their stupid brown berets.
Making the world a better place.
Exactly.
So
this
sad.
is like a young Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah. Really unfortunate. That's really, really unfortunate.
Yeah, but what a hot mess.
Yeah.
It is a
Again,
very hot
Chad,
mess.
it's amazing how Dr. King is serving his purpose, even in death.
Yeah.
Even in
And
death.
that's the thing, is like people, and I'm glad you said that, because people like to say, and in fact, somebody said this today to me, that, I wish we could go back to the days of Martin Luther King. You see, he had it figured out. They marched peacefully and they did all the things. And it's like, well, no, what we see happening today is the logical conclusion of what Martin Luther King started.
That's right.
It's the logical conclusion. Like, there is no other trajectory, there is no route other than where we are now. I make this point all the time, that, prior, I mean, again, like, anybody can look this stuff up. It's not like it's hidden. It's only hidden to the extent that it's not the narrative that the mainstream media goes with. But if you look at Black America prior to the 1960s, you saw this kind of upward mobility. And what generated that upward mobility is this kind of do for self attitude, that the government's not going to do it for us. The white man's not going to do it for us. It's up to me. It's up to me to be responsible. It's up to me to be an entrepreneur. It's up to me to be productive in civilization. Yes, you had segregation, but a lot of these segregation laws, which were unconstitutional, were being done away with. They were being repealed, and at the county level, at the state level, because A, they were economically unfeasible, and B, they were unconstitutional. And so they were being repealed without the help of the so-called NAACP or the civil rights movement. And what Martin Luther King did with his rhetoric is that he emphasized and in many cases exaggerated the extent to how Black people were being treated. And they wanted to dramatize, his words. He said this, you can look this up yourself. They wanted to dramatize to the world the treatment of Black people in America. And so what they did was they relied on the so-called freedom riders who were bussed down to the South from the North, who purposefully did not pull permits to do their marching demonstrations, who went into public places where segregation was the law, and they wanted to be arrested. They wanted to get that optic of the hoses and the dogs and stuff, because again, if you are in a certain area and you're breaking the law, you're not pulling permits to do your demonstration, traffic and all these things, the police will forcefully remove you. And I looked into this myself. They weren't only forcefully removing Black folks for civil rights, they were also removing white union organizations, predominantly white union organizations, with dogs, with batons, with hoses. This was a common way of dispersing crowds in that era. But we, with our limited understanding of history today, when we think of dogs, the batons, and hoses, we think of Black people being treated like this on a daily basis in the South throughout the 1960s. And it's just not the case. It was an optic that they leaned heavy on to get legislation passed. And it just so happens that the legislation that they were able to get passed is unconstitutional. State mandated segregation is unconstitutional. Federal government forced integration is also unconstitutional. Both are unconstitutional, and they infringe upon the rights of the small business owner. That, for some reason, is too complex of a conversation for people to have, and people would rather lean on. I'm still here, by the way. People would rather lean on narratives, sensationalism, mythology, than to ask themselves the hard questions of, was the Civil Rights Act of 1964 a good thing for America? Was the Civil Rights Movement a good thing for America? Did Martin Luther King do something positive for America and Black America in particular? I don't think he did. I think he moved Black Americans from being a trying race to a crying race. I say that all the time. He gave us a kind of blueprint whereby we put our trust, our fate in the federal government, and our hopes and aspirations, and whether it moves or doesn't move on our behalf, rather than relying upon ourselves and our men and our women and our families to be successful.
And to Chad, if I may, again, this whole thing and the way they make it, about color and so on and so forth. Again, this is an old method that has been time and time again, same playbook. They keep running the same play over and over and over again. While you were speaking, Chad, and I mentioned this to you over the phone when you and I spoke a couple of days ago, and I just gave an example off the cuff when we were talking, and I made reference to the National Negro Congress. Now, the NNC, and I just pulled it up on the internet while you were speaking because I wanted to make sure that I had the exact date and year. The NNC convened for its first national convention in Chicago. Chicago, ladies and gentlemen, is the city where the Communist Party of America was founded back in 1919. There were two separate communist organizations. There was the Communist Labor Party, and there was the Communist Party of America. Eventually, by 1920, they merged into one and became CPUSA under the directive of the Comintern. Soviet authorities said, no. There will not be two communist parties in America. There must only be one, because it would be easier for Soviet authorities to control one communist party in the United States as opposed to two. And every other offshoot socialist organization was, of course, given the label as fascist if they would not take the directives from Moscow. But that's a totally different story. But let me get back to this, because communists have been using these digs to try and smear people since the 1930s, calling them fascists or even calling them white supremacists. The National Convention in Chicago occurred on February 14th in 1936. Just right here, just pulled up without me going in too deep. Richard Wright attended the convention and wrote about it in an essay entitled 2 Million Black Voices, which appeared in the communist magazine known as The New Masses. This was one of the biggest communist publications in America, The New Masses. And Richard Wright, famous African-American playwright, who was, I don't know, Chad, I don't know if Richard Wright was a small C communist or was he an actual member of the Communist Party. I know he would later on renounce the Communist Party, but he was at one point heavily affiliated, if not an outright member. But this was going all the way back to 1936. So this whole push, this whole play. So when anyone was trying to pinpoint the threat that was being posed by Marxism-Leninism in the United States, they were labeled as someone who was against the cause for Black equality and Black civil rights and Black liberation and all these various things. And so the tagline became, anyone warning or trying to warn Americans about the threat of communism was someone who was against the success and the improvement of Black lives in America.
Wow. You got anything you want to add to that before we move on, Layla?
No, I think that's pretty concise.
Okay.
I mean, the playbook, that is rinse and repeat. It's never going to stop. They never have to they never have to change it because no one's smart enough to just pay attention.
Exactly. So as I was saying earlier, when it comes to the fact that, it started off in the early part of the 20th century where they were very subtle and incremental and kind of their plan for American education. It's gotten to the point today where they're very out and they're very open with their agenda, and they're even talking about their agenda. They're telling you what their plan is. I mean, it's to the point where you don't need folks like me or Chuck or Layla to explain it to you, because they are explaining it to you. They are talking about their strategy and their plan. And so, it becomes a thing of, what are your values, right? What do you stand for? Like, what are your principles? Because you should be alarmed by what they have going on. Are you okay with what they have going on? Do you not think that they will be effective in their agenda? They've historically been effective. So at what point do you actually speak up or speak out against what's going on, or you begin to turn the tide by doing what Layla says in terms of implementing some kind of pushback propaganda, if you will? So I wanted to share this video, or this clip with you guys. This one I titled Get Into the Schools. So this again is Maxwell Frost joined together with two leaders of two think tanks, leftist think tanks, where they're talking about their agenda, their strategy that they've been implementing and that they plan to implement all the more. So let's see here. Where'd it go? Here he is.
Yeah, this is really eye-opening. I'm really excited to share this. I'm really excited we can all watch this clip.
Our message at Next Gen is that we don't put our hope in any single politician or party. We put our hope in America's young people, and that policy doesn't just happen in Congress. It also happens at the state and local level, and there's going to be a lot of work, especially to celebrate and also move forward to make sure people take advantage of with the climate legislation that's come out. And also opportunities in places like Michigan, where there's a trifecta to move progressive policy forward that will be really transformational. So there's a lot we can do at the state and local level, and then you can show over 2 years. This is why showing up and voting matters, because who has control determines what the outcome is. And our message at Next Gen is that
I'm playing it
put our
again
hope in any
because
single politician or party.
I'm playing it again because somebody was saying that they couldn't hear the last video we were playing, so hopefully people can hear it now.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Our message
Okay.
Because at Next Gen is that we don't put our hope in any single politician or party. We put our hope in America's young people, and that policy doesn't just happen in Congress. It also happens at the state and local level. And there's going to be a lot of work, especially to celebrate and also move forward and make sure people take advantage of with the climate legislation that's come out. And also opportunities in places like Michigan, where there's a trifecta to move progressive policy forward that will be really transformational. So there's a lot we can do at the state and local level, and then you can show over 2 years. This is why showing up and voting matters, because who has control determines what the outcome is. And we need to determine who's in there for us.
I would say education is extremely important. While college campuses, as we've noted, is a really important place for civic engagement. I think including more education when they're younger, when students are in public education or private school, wherever they are, is really, really important to make sure that we have an emphasis on civic engagement.
I mean, so you heard what they said.
Mm-hmm.
This lady, by the way, was very difficult to edit. Every other word was
Yeah.
and I do that sometimes too, to be fair, but golly. But yeah, so I just did it there. So what they're talking about is crucial. Layla made the point earlier, and I think she, hit the nail on the head, where she talked about how, well, it was a kind of throwaway comment, but I hope you guys caught it, where she said that leftists aren't having children. They're just not, at least not to the same degree that conservatives are. However, public schools are the default for all parents, regardless of whether you're conservative or liberal or whatever the case may be. And so conservatives are putting their children in schools where the curriculum is controlled by leftists, the same kind of leftists who are on that stage talking about that we have to get to kids as early as primary and secondary school, to indoctrinate them with our worldview, with our way of thinking. So conservatives are having the kids, they're feeding the system, and the left are the ones who are saying, thank you for your children, I'll take it from here. And so goes the rest of it. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, Chad, I wrote down here, first things first. Layla laughing, I ain't even said nothing yet. I'm tripping out because once upon a time, it just goes to show you how much our society is degraded. Think about this for us. I mean, this is C-SPAN. You know, once a for better or for worse, a respected hallmark institution of American political dialogue and scholarship and debate and everything else. And I just sit here, I wrote some notes as I was listening to this last night, and I just said to myself, I said, once upon a time, I mean, these people wouldn't have been allowed a second of airtime on C-SPAN. I mean, you talked about the lady, you said, man, she was extremely hard to edit. Once again, barely coherent. But anyway, you know, about the college campus and civic engagement and everything. That's not the point. I mean, we know exactly what she means when she says civic engagement, right? These are, you know, it's the Sovietization of the American campus, right? Turning these young, gullible, impressionable people into their Bolshevik mercenaries. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's exactly what they're doing. And, you know, and God, y'all pray for me because I'm in Michigan. And I'm telling you already, you know, the new Congress, I mean, we used to have a Republican controlled state house and Senate. And, you know, they just got sworn in and they off to the races. So y'all pray for me. But back to the subject, it's yeah, Chad. I mean, I really don't know, what else to say, man. I mean, you know, I know you got more clips to play, but I guess I'll pass it to Layla. But this was hard to watch. It was hard to listen to.
Yeah, it was hard to watch, but it was incredibly truthful and insightful, and really, it's nice to see it just put so plainly for people, because the things I've made some notes, the things that they say are just diabolical in a sense of what they're planning and their strategy and how they're going to get to people. I'm going to wait to share my favorite clips or my favorite quotes until after we watch all the clips in case you included them. But yeah, this agenda is not stopping, and it's really disturbing to see that, you know, at the local level, like Chuck was saying, as soon as they get that power, they're gone. They're going to push that agenda as hard and as fast as they can without any remorse, without any reflection. And it's so disturbing to see that on the conservative side, we're just here like sitting ducks, just, you know, saying patriot over and over again. And it's just, these people have
Trump's
think tanks. They have think tanks. This is all they do. You think they're going home to their husbands and their families? No. This is all that they do.
Yeah.
This is not, and Chad, you know, this is what I do. Right. That in society, Chad, isn't supposed to just go full steam ahead. You know, change is supposed to proceed after protracted contemplation. Right. You don't just, you know, you have to really, and that's why, you know, our founders and framers set up the kind of country that they did, because they wanted the wheels or the gears of change to turn slowly, because they understood, again, that people get swept up in their passions. All it takes is one charismatic, manipulative demagogue, and next thing you know, society, you know, is off the rails. You know, you cannot have civilization if, you know, people just at a moment's notice, just, you know,
change their mind.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Society doesn't work that way, you know, and they understood the pitfalls of human nature. And that's why these safety measures were built into our system to protect us from ourselves.
Right.
To protect us from ourselves. And again, you know, reiterating what I said in the last live stream, that we had to pull down because, you know, we kept getting cut off and freezing. I mean, we are literally in a war. We are in a cold war right now. It doesn't matter if the culprit is China. If you want to be more spiritual about it and say it's a literal devil, an archetypal devil, whatever, It may be. We know that this war is being waged on multiple fronts, but just being as strict as I possibly can. I mean, our country is being overrun, overrun.
100%. I titled this next one or what did I call it? Co-opted values or something like that. I don't know. Let's see what it's about. I gotta keep turning the mic like this for some reason, because for some reason people aren't able to hear the audio. So a little ghetto, but bear with me. Let's see.
We actually had this really incredible number. We asked voters, what have they done since the 2020 election? Have they donated to a political candidate? Have they gone to an event? Have they volunteered for a candidate? Have they just been talking to friends and family about politics? Like 80% say they're talking to their friends and family about politics. It's a little bit younger for Gen Z, but their actual civic engagement of volunteering and attending events is far higher than any other generation. I think it was 46% of Gen Z said that they attended an event or volunteered for a candidate since 2020. The next closest, I think, was 23% among millennials. So that's a really incredible action. And I think just making sure that we're really engaging our youth at a young age and not just on college campuses is important.
So like what I took from that, and I'll pass it around to you guys, is like for them, politics is like literally the new religion, where you're voting or supporting this candidate or volunteering for this candidate or door knocking for this candidate is kind of like sacraments. It's kind of like you doing your confessional or doing your part to, you know, for the kingdom, for the utopia, for this heaven on earth that we're trying to build. And again, like I made this point and I keep reiterating it and I will keep reiterating it, that the goal of the public school system is to turn young Americans into statists, into progressive humanist types on the quest for global Marxism. Like that is their goal. And you know, what she's talking about in terms of what think tanks like her organization are doing is part and parcel with making sure that you understand that it's your moral obligation to play a part in building this utopia with us as a collective. Hopefully that makes sense to those of you who are watching. Layla, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, this is their religion, this is their life, this is their identity. This is who they are. They don't have the mental capacity, I guess, or the emotional bandwidth. I mean, a lot of them suffer from severe depression and all of these self-inflicted and, you know, family-inflicted traumas, because again, the way they behave will cause trauma. A lot of the things that they advocate for will cause all of this trauma that causes them to be depressed and feel hopeless and need to find these group and have identity politics because they don't have family and all, so on and so forth. And it's funny to see that their confidence in the way she speaks and what they're going to do and how they're going to be pushing forward, you know, targeting younger and younger and younger. And it's interesting when you look at it from the perspective of how conservatives talk about dealing with the youth and dealing with the next generation. They feel very hopeless. They feel like, oh, there's nothing you can do. You can't change these kids. They've been brainwashed and so on and so forth. And that's really disturbing because look at what the left can do in a few short years, a few semesters of college. They can take upright, conservative, heterosexual, normal person and convert them into someone who's literally removing their own reproductive organs like that, regardless of what kind of context or, you know, environment you put someone in. That's a leap of that's an achievement. Okay. So that should be a lesson to other conservatives that it doesn't matter. All of these different checkpoints in human development, especially, you know, young adult, adolescent, children, like young children, even kindergarten, all of these are checkpoints where we have the opportunity to go ahead and reverse and re-engineer and help correct all of this leftist programming. It's never too late, because if it was too late, they wouldn't have this strategy. They would just say, oh, their parents have them. They've been in Bible study since the age of 5. There's nothing we can do. They would throw their hands up. They never invest money and time in things that don't work. Whereas unfortunately, the conservatives have some sort of grit where they just want to keep on with losing strategies and keep on with things that don't really work. So that's one thing we can all take away from the left, is that it's never too late to change the hearts and minds, especially of young people.
That's a fantastic point. Like, that was so well put. And the thing is like, I mean, I do see a trend where I live here in, south of Dallas, Texas, where more and more parents are pulling their children out of the public schools. Because while they understand or believe that they can't change the entirety of the school system overnight, they know that the school is the burning building, and they had better get their children out of that school lest they burn down with it. And so, people say all the time whenever I advocate for homeschooling that, oh, kids are going to be socially awkward and all these things. And it's like, first and foremost, well, I'm not going to get into the first, thing
I
that
just
I
want to
want
say
to.
I was homeschooled.
Mhm.
I just want to point that out. It is, you do get to be socially awkward, but at the same time, you get to avoid a lot of the pitfalls of, this trauma-based mind control they call leftist education. So
Yeah. I went to public school here in Texas. And it's nothing exactly to write home about. You know what I mean? The thing is like, I was exposed to a lot of things I shouldn't have been exposed to. By the time I was in middle school going into high school, there's already enmity between me and my parents. I thought my parents were losers. I thought they were jokers. There was no bonding between us. I bonded more with my peers at school and with some of my favorite teachers at school, whose values today are very antithetical to my own. And, I juxtapose that to a lot of the lessons and wisdom that my parents did try to impart to me. And thankfully, I came back full circle to where I am now. And it was necessary for me to learn a lot of the lessons that I ended up learning on my own. But at the same time, we shouldn't punt the responsibility of our children's education to the state. Oh, because we don't want them to be socially awkward. Oh, because we don't want, whatever the case may be, because we want to expose them to the world. Well, your children's minds aren't really fully developed, and that's why God put you in their life to be that authoritative figure, to teach them right from wrong, to foster their creativity and their talents, and to teach them to be, responsible individuals. That's why God put, you as parents in those little ones' life. So their education is really what you make it. And I'm not knocking, people put their kids in private schools and all sorts of different educational contexts, and more power to them. If it works for you and your family, then do what you got to do. However, the reason I'm a strong advocate for homeschooling, especially for people who are who are aware of what's going on, is because the whole idea of centralized education in the first place, I think, is wrong. You can't be a free society and have centralized education. You just can't. Like those two things don't make sense. Like, you can't be a free society where people have the freedom to practice whatever religion they want, to believe whatever they want, to move at their own volition. You can't advocate for that on one hand and advocate for a centralized education where everybody's learning the same things, are being indoctrinated with the same curriculum. You can't do that on the other hand. It just doesn't make sense. I hope that I hope what I'm saying makes sense to you guys.
No, it does. I've never heard that point taken before about how it literally hinders a free society, but it's so true, because it's destabilizing to have more. That's why I didn't personally want to go to school, because I didn't want to enter an environment that was opposite of how I felt and how I believed. And I just felt like it would be too much of a burden with the fact that I'm trying to learn, and I think it's better to insulate people. I don't see what's wrong with that.
Right. Chuck, I'll give you the last word before we move on to the next clip.
Yeah, I mean, that's why when it comes to schooling, just like anything else, there needs to be a free market, when it comes to education. All right. And it's just like when you go to a grocery store, you pick out what you like and whatever suits your fancy for what you can afford to spend, or what you're willing to spend on the product. Then heck man, go with God. We just but I want to go back to something that Layla was saying about just education. I mean, in terms of just this defeatist and pessimistic attitude that a lot of people have when it comes to the youth. I think there are some things, some hurdles, and there are certain developmental stages that I think that are inevitable, that happen to most human beings. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, again, I don't think many people who young people who have these beliefs are ever presented with the counter argument.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, the reason why I may have ventured into early adulthood, with certain preconceived notions, was because I had never been presented with the opposing argument. It reminds me of something that Thomas Sowell talks about whenever he's asked about his early adulthood, when he was in his own words, a diehard Marxist.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the reason why he was, in fact, a Marxist was because, like any other human being, he can look out onto the world and, gazing upon the sea of humanity and see that the world has problems. And, he just took to the Marxist worldview because at the time, and it's still that way today, unfortunately, it was the Marxist worldview. They were the only ones that were presenting, it seemed, anyone who was curious with any viable solutions. He had never heard any counter argument, right? And then by the time, of course, he sat before the great Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago and still walked away a Marxist, and he didn't become what he eventually became until he got a government job. Go figure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to give young people a little bit more credit, because perhaps we can rescue a great deal of them if we would just present them with the information they need in order to make an informed decision. They are, again, hurdles, but young people, they want to belong. They want to feel as though their lives have meaning. They want to make their impression. They want to make an impression on the world. But unfortunately, what they haven't learned is that you actually have to make yourself someone of value so that you can have this sort of quote unquote self-esteem that you feel as though you deserve. You actually have to go out and do something, and not, and when I say do something, I don't mean it, in the same way that they mean it, but I mean it in terms of just you as an individual stepping out on that ledge and finding a way on your own, as opposed to saying, well, I'm Black, or I'm a woman, or I'm gay and I'm trans, and all this other foolishness. So yeah, I think I think that is something that is worthwhile engaging in the battle on the educational front. And when you said something, Chad, and you and Layla were talking about it sort of being a new religion. Chad, you may have chopped that clip up in here, but at some point, I think Congressman Ramirez, or not Congressman Ramirez, but the woman in the middle whose last name is Ramirez. I think it was her who said, and I quoted this, I wrote this down: humanity is at the forefront of everything, is what she says.
Yes.
Humanity is at the forefront of everything. Now, what exactly does that mean? Now, when people say, well, this is a religion, it is sort of like a religion, or a cosmology, as I like to say, because it's this newfangled way of trying to understand what is in fact the purpose of life, and how should I as a human being be in the world, or how should I be in this life. And so Chad, I don't know if you are familiar with the work of Timothy Shriver and someone named Dr. Roger Weisberg, what they came up with called the Castle model of education, collaborative, academic, social, and emotional learning.
Yeah, which gave rise to SEL.
SEL.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can just real quick, and I'm gonna pass it off to you, Chad. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make more responsible and caring decisions.
Yeah, so gone are the days of reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're
right.
Yeah.
Social awareness, self-management, self-awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, and all of these other things. And so humanity is at the forefront. And so when you know what they think and what they believe, you know exactly what they mean when they say those kinds of things.
Yep.
Because if you getting in your gas-powered automobile is pumping CO2 into the atmosphere,
and
it's
causing unjust to the Nicaraguans.
Exactly. You're causing the planet to be uninhabitable. So you're not considering humanity, because your selfishness is going to ruin us all, because you have to put the collective before your own selfish.
Yeah, it goes back to what Layla was saying. This is their life. Like, they eat and breathe and live this. They come up with these ways to really kind of like jujitsu society into going their way. By charging society, by charging humanity with, it is morally unjust for you to not go our way, to not see it our way. If you get inside your car, your gas-powered truck, or your diesel-powered truck, and crank up the engine, that's unjust and unfair to the young, poor Nicaraguan children. So you better buy yourself an electric car, because that is socially responsible. That's considering humanity with, with the car you drive, with where you spend your dollars, with where you send your children to school, such and so forth.
And I just want to say,
it's demonic.
I just want to say, Chuck, that curriculum, the Castle model, that sounds like the curriculum for a concentration camp.
Yeah.
Literally, if you think about it. There's no analytical thought. There's no problem solving. It's just managing emotions and working within the hive mind.
Yeah. And you're not supposed to solve problems. You're supposed to think about what the learning, how the learning experience made you feel. And not only that, but you're supposed to put yourself, or try to put yourself, in the shoes of the person that created the material that was meant for you to study, so that you can properly understand what it really means. And I know that sounds like some kind of weird, like boogeyman kind of stuff. It's the I think it was the not Politics and Education. It was a book the name of it is escaping me. That was written by Paulo Freire, a Brazilian Marxist, who came up with the whole concept of that as an educator, your job is to, or as a learner, your job is to separate yourself from the information that you're learning, problematize it, and then bring it back into, it's kind of like this whole dialectical process between the material that you learn and you yourself. And so, because the person who's giving you this material is trying to do so for the purpose of course, reinforcing something that is inherently unjust. And it is your job as the learner to bring the society, to move the society forward.
Basically, MK Ultra yourself.
Yeah, why learn? Why learn? Literally. Why learn Shakespeare? Right? Why learn about our history as Americans?
The classics.
Yeah, why learn about the classics? What are they trying to tell you? And see, well, they must be.
Everything is relative. Everything is pragmatic. Everything is, everything is utilitarian. And so whether it's, CASEL or SEL, social emotional learning, which is, I guess, a shorter acronym from CASEL, or trauma informed learning. I don't know if you heard of that, Chuck. All of these things are being implemented in the public schools, and they're also being implemented in corporate America too, and many of HR departments with diversity and inclusion and all the things where it's like, oh, yes, yes, Jamal is 30 minutes late every day, but think about his circumstances. Think about where he came from. Yes, Tyrone is late every day, and he, takes an extra hour on lunch break, and whereas John Smith doesn't, but John Smith
He's
is privileged.
decolonized. He decolonized his time management.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that book that I was
Time
referring
is
to,
racist.
the Politics of Education. That's the name of the book.
Oh, great. I'm gonna look it up.
And you see, I don't know if you guys remember this. It was, I think 2 or 3 years ago, where it was Amazon. It's coming back to me slowly, but yeah, Amazon, a large portion of Blacks came out and said Amazon is racist because they started doing kind of work evaluations, and white workers were getting more rewards and incentives and kickbacks than Black workers. And that was indicative of racism, where, as it turns out, the white workers were just working harder. Yeah. And so I don't know if you guys remember that.
I'm gonna throw myself off the screen.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so we touched on, and Chuck, I noticed that whenever you and I talk on our lives, we like to say things like, this isn't anything new, this goes all the way back. This isn't anything new, this goes all the way back. Right. Because it does. Again, when it comes to what we're talking about with regard to education, it's not like this Gen Z congressman and these think tank leaders just figured this stuff out. This stuff has been in the works for a very long time. Right. Proper terminology for it is ideological subversion. Yuri Bezmenov talked about that in the 1980s with G. Edward Griffin, and I wanted to play a clip from that interview. So here that goes.
It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see, most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid of society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
He reminds me of my dad. He's just like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Just plain and simple.
Yeah, they're brain dead.
Right. So, this goes back to a little bit what you're talking about, Layla. Like, it does take time. It does take investing in the youth to undo a lot of this ideological subversion that we have seen take place in our country. it's not going to happen overnight, because it is a very steep uphill battle, because you're having to contend with hegemony. You're having to contend with a very pervasive kind of perpetually peddled propaganda. Say that 5 times, real fast. But you're having to contend with that, which our kids are subject to on a daily basis. And so you really have to insulate them from that propaganda and indoctrinate them with genuine values to begin to undo a lot of this ideological subversion that we've seen take place. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on the school district. It depends on the locality. It depends on, the people in a given, region who share values and share, the same concerns, to begin to implement those values within the context of your local public school. But I think many of these public schools are so far gone that it will take just a lot of hard work to begin to turn the tide in terms of what curriculum kids are learning at the public school level. And for that reason, a lot of people, once again, as I alluded to earlier, because they understand that, wow, all these people around me are not interested. Well, first of all, they're not aware that this is going on. Second of all, to the extent that you do educate them on what's going on, they think that you're a crazy, mad conspiracy theorist. And so a lot of parents just throw up their hands and say, you know what? I can't control what's going on in public school. I can't control what's going on in my local community. I'm just going to pull my kids out and homeschool them, because at least for me in my household, we're not going to be subject to this kind of indoctrination that's going on. And then you see people who are starting their own classical schools, their own private schools, and they're kind of consolidating like-minded individuals to turn their tide. So you see people who are, at work trying to do what they can. But I just hope that this will begin to trend the more we begin to see exactly what it is that Yuri was talking about.
I know he would just laugh at all of this. He would be like, oh, okay. Men aren't men and women aren't women. Oh, okay. And I do have to say that a lot of conservatives, again, get demoralized because they see, like Yuri Bezmenov talking about, oh, it's really impossible and all these things. Like once someone's, subverted, you can't really reverse it. But at the time, I think at the rate of change and how much media you could expose someone to in like I guess the early 80s was when he was talking, that would probably be, it would be so slow. That's correct. But here we have this technology that can completely transform a person within a semester, because of the repetition and basically these people are MK altering themselves. So we have new tools that they didn't have in the past, and they didn't envision the rate of change. And it's just so sad because there's so many points that we could rally behind and really put the work in, like you were mentioning about the parents who want to homeschool in the communities and things like this. I don't see any counter propaganda. I don't see any messaging campaigns targeting those families, giving them guidelines, giving them structure, giving them ideas and patterns. Because the one thing that people miss around propaganda and marketing and all of this is that it's one thing to convey a message of this is what we think and this is what we believe. The second part of that is giving them realistic models in behavior to actually follow, because they're not creative. They're not going to sit there and think, oh, I see that all these people are trying to become trans. I guess I'll try it, I guess I'll do it. If you look at it, they give you step by step, this is what you do. They do that just to help educate them and give them the exact precise method to follow. We don't do that. We just say, oh, you should be a good person, you should be a patriot, you should care about freedom. What does that mean? There's no practical guidelines of behavior for that for the majority of people.
Good point.
Oh no. Okay. You moderate. I didn't want to cut anybody off. I don't know if you were going to jump into a clip or if you wanted to get my take. Yeah, Layla is right though. I mean, most people, they see if, I mean, what like Layla just said, I like the way she ended that in terms of just what does freedom even mean? Yeah, it's funny. It's a concept that many of folk take for granted because it seems self-evident, but it's not. It really isn't. Because if you're not getting the outcomes that you want, or if you if some people have a better chance, say for example, if you're born into wealth, or if you're born more physically endowed, if you're a better athlete or something like that, and then people say, well, this person's path toward, I guess, material comfort, happiness in that sense is easier or shorter. Well, then what does it all mean, right? I mean, we who embody what Tom Sowell referred to as the constrained vision, we primarily concern ourselves with incentive and process. Right? There has to be a way to go about doing things. But the opposing vision is to say, well, screw your process. If it doesn't result in all around fairness, then the very concept, the very notion of freedom thing anyway. And so you begin to see this new relative morality, in a sense, because morality must be subordinate to the interests of the group or the party or the proletariat, the Black people, the white people, the trans people, and that. So the ends will always justify the means, because there is no morality that proceeds from anything eternal. It's all about the interests of the people who feel as though they aren't getting what they want.
This next clip I wanted to play reminded me of something that I saw years ago when I was doing some research. It had some striking similarities. It's from the panel discussion, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it before I play what it reminded me of. Here we go.
I think showing people that government can work for them is part of what's going to help with voter turnout. There's no big secret why 50% of this country doesn't vote. It's important that we have leaders who don't see themselves as just working for movements or for people, but working with people, and see themselves as part of a greater whole, right? And that's the way I see myself. A lot of that comes from the fact that I've been an organizer and come from the movement world. That's the way I see myself. That's the way I see my colleagues. We're working in this institution to fight for a better world, to pass the bills we want. But we all know that to pass the bills you want, it's a math problem. And to fix that math problem, we got to get people to go out and vote a lot of these people out and switch it, right? You got to change the math. And so I think all of this comes down to showing people that government can work for them.
What's up, Chuck?
I'm laughing. I can't help but harken back to Reagan. One of his famous quotes is, the worst thing a person wants to hear is that
Yes.
we're from the government and we're here to help you.
Yeah.
What is wrong with oh Lordy. This is the same man. Remember, Chad, he started out, I don't know if you got to splice that clip in here, but he said that the part of the reason why we had a lot of youth turnout, and I know Layla, I know this is on your mind. Let's just acknowledge the elephant in the room, and let's just pretend for a second that the voting process in the United States is still above board. We're not even going to address the fact that there is some nefarious things going on, okay? But let's just pretend for a second that
it's called improving access to voting.
Right. The mail-in ballot, the chain of custody. Let's just pretend it's all okay. That's a conversation for another day. But he said that what did he say, Chad? I mean, I wasn't even 30 seconds in. He said that seeing young people are taking advantage of movements, seeing a young man being lynched in broad daylight, talking about George Floyd. You know,
he was somebody's son.
Again, I mean, pathetic. You know, and it's fun. The crazy thing is, again, these are young people who eventually become old people, and then they just rinse, right? Wash, repeat, however the saying goes, and then they bring up the next crop, right? Because these people don't necessarily grow out of this, not all the time. Most of them don't, because because we see them on TV every day, every night, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, still peddling in the same problem.
The same thing. They act like it's the 1943.
Same thing.
And yeah, it's like they literally still live in the 1960s. They're like, oh, well, we have to worry about this and that. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, where?
People want to, well, I'm from the movement. I'm from the movement world.
Yeah, I'm an organizer, he said.
I'm an organizer. Are you? Okay, I know exactly what that means. Again, man, I mean, is anyone at all concerned in terms of who is in fact backing these people? Because I guarantee you that the money trail leads to Beijing. I'm sure of it, and in other places as well. But I mean, you know, it's Go ahead, Chad. I know it was something you wanted to say.
Yeah.
So he talked about himself coming from a background of community organizing, right? So that's check number one. He talks about how government works for the people and how we should think about our government in such a way as kind of being a provider for us. That's what he means. He's not talking about what the founding fathers envisioned whenever they ratified the Constitution. No, he's talking about a kind of socialist egalitarian system. That's what he's envisioning. But when I was listening to him speak, it reminded me of a politician in his youth who I was doing research on years ago, and I wanted to play that clip. This was from 1994 or 6. Yeah, I think this is from either 1994 or 1996. Some of you might recognize this face, if I can find it. I feel like a boomer when it comes to technology sometimes. All right, so here we go.
As far as voter registration, we live in a very cynical time about politics. Most of it is not rocket science, it's just hard work. What you have to do is you have to go into churches, you have to go into sororities, and recruit volunteers and train those volunteers and be systematic about putting them in spots throughout the city. You talk about welfare cuts, and that if you don't vote, somebody's going to cut your welfare. Sometimes you, as people develop, you can engage them in more sophisticated arguments about, the potential power of a minority, particularly in primaries. In the end, it really has to do with being able to link together people's understanding that their self-interest is tied to the political process. And so a lot of groundwork has to be laid to explain that, no, in fact, you are an active agent.
So there's a lot of similarities between this young, newly elected congressman and what a young 20-something-year-old Obama was saying in the early 90s, whenever he was giving this little talk at a public library there in Boston, I think it was. A lot of similarities. Again, this young kid, he may think he's saying something original. He may think that, he was chosen by the powers that be because they saw something special in him. No, like, you're just a cog in the machine. The thing is like, to the extent that you have these individuals who are the children of, certain agents and and individuals, such as was the case with Obama. I mean, for those of you who are aware of his mother and father and what their background is, these young people are groomed for a specific cause to play a role in the times in which we're living. So again, in old, Chad fashion, this is nothing new. Like, we see this happening again and again and again, but these young people think that they're unique. They think that they're special.
That's
Like,
because
no, you're a useful idiot.
they live in
Yeah.
a world of secondary experiences.
Yeah.
They don't have any practical knowledge of reality. It's like, there we go. You can make a virtual metaverse for them and they believe it.
Right.
Chad, what you just said hit me, because somebody sent me a direct message. Matter of fact, I know he probably follows the both of you too. I've never met him in person. His name is Gregory Smith. Yeah, he follows me. Real nice guy, always saying encouraging things in the comment section. He sends me messages from time to time over Instagram. And he sent me a message in response to my most recent YouTube upload on Malcolm X. And he said to me, he said, man, it is so crazy listening to you and hearing and learning these things that I never knew. He said, when I look at like the Black Lives Matter movement and all these people today, he said, I can see off the rip that this is BS. Like they're full of, you know what? This is trash. He said, but what's hitting me is knowing that the Malcolm X's of the world and the Stokely Carmichaels of the world and the H, all these folks, they were the BLM of their day. But now fast forward to today, now we're telling a totally different story because they're lionized. But back then, what made those folk any different from the people that are doing the same exact rebel rousing today? They're the same. Not only are they the same, but of course they are controlled by the same, again, Chad, it sounds like a broken record, the very same white, primarily Jewish, progressive Marxists behind the scenes. It's sad. And when I look at Barack Obama, I mean, that guy there, man, I mean, shame on him, man. Shame on him.
He fooled a lot of us, though.
Right. And you couldn't talk about his past. You couldn't talk about his background. He talked about his parents, right? His relationship with Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, and his mentor, Frank Marshall Davis. You want to know anything about Barack Obama? And many suggest that it is, in fact, Frank Marshall Davis, who is Barack Obama's biological father. I don't know if that's true or false, but nevertheless, he's Barack Obama's mentor by Barack Obama's own admission.
Yeah.
But you couldn't talk about it because you'd be considered a racist. But if you want to know about the beliefs of Frank Marshall Davis, just go and read his writings. Just go and read his publications in Chicago Star and other places. Tried and true, died in the war, communist Soviet apparatchik. Barack Obama's mentor.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
You
And
can't
the
make this stuff up.
ignorance.
Can't make it up.
The ignorance of the masses, and they just cheered and just were like, yeah, even though it's like this person is an agent. Like, why is that? Like, what did you learn all of your life? I was told most of my life I didn't understand things because I would be like, that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. And they were like, oh, you just don't understand. I'm like, now that I'm here, I'm like, yeah, I couldn't have that mindset. I couldn't just go along with it.
What amazed me is he's like, well, what you gotta do is you gotta go into the churches, you gotta go into the sororities, and you gotta tell people that
You see how he was shifting at the podium too? It must have been a rough night.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wasn't quite there yet, man.
He wasn't feeling he didn't wear off yet.
What you gotta do is you gotta go into the hood and you gotta tell these people that, if you don't vote, somebody's gonna take your welfare. And then as they get a little smarter, you can engage them in a little bit more sophisticated
Listen,
talk of
niggers.
politics. And
They're coming for you. They're coming for your chicken. Like, what kind of condescending bullshit is that?
Exactly. They're coming for your welfare. That's how you get them right. You know,
Sad.
that representative so-and-so also said during that
So-and-so.
CSPAN talk that
I'm sorry, I'm being a joke.
that he is a representative of all Gen Zers, he says, and
Yeah.
he includes politicians. He said politicians, artists, and he also said clergy. I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
But again, man, same old. You know, these people, they take these Ivy League educated eggheads with no wisdom because they don't know God, so they can't have wisdom because they, you know, and they filter that trash from Harvard and everywhere else, and they take it to the ghetto. And then you got these folk, and they take the right guy, take the right mouthpiece, the person, and they put them out front to have the gullible masses believing that this is some type of grassroots movement. And it's coming, you know, it's coming from the Ivy League and other, you know,
and people fall for it every time.
Fall for it every single solitary time.
Every single time. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you how many times my mom told me about how Lincoln, he used to study by candlelight and this and that. And I would be like, what else was he going to study by? That's all they had. And I'm like hearing this lesson over and over again. I'm like, it was just something that impacted her as a child, you know, the dedication. Yeah. And I'm like, but as a child, you didn't learn what Marxism was. You didn't learn what any of these things were. It's like where the Black community and the disconnect and the like constant, just willful ignorance just never stops shocking me. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's ill, Layla, because literally the communism is the story of the 20th century. It is the story of the 20th century.
From the very beginning.
So many Black people have no idea what you're talking about and have the foggiest idea, like, you know, and amazing. Because these aren't, you know, in the word or anything like that is not a part of the byline. When I was in elementary school, when I was a kid, you know, in history class or whatever class, and there was always the pictures on the wall of this famous Black person and that famous Black person. The fact that W.E.B. Du Bois was a member of the Communist Party wasn't in his byline. No. The fact that Langston Hughes was a communist was not in his byline. No. He was just a great African-American poet.
He was trying to get ahead. You know, we really, really need Meg the Stallion to teach us about communism. Because without that, they're never going to listen. Like somebody needs to get that.
And Chad, do you mind if I share with the audience what you and I was talking about? Because Layla didn't even hear this. It was just you and I. Because you know, you said that you were having a private conversation with your wife, and she asked you, like, why do you ever get tired of talking about Marxism? And you know, you and I came to the same conclusion that you know, the reason why we talk about it so much is because it perfectly encapsulates everything that you need to know and understand in terms of these counterfeit of systems that deviate from the one truth.
Yeah,
that's why Marxism, Leninism, and communism, that's why we talk about it so much, because it is right there. You can literally see what happens when, because you can break this up in you got God, you got right the holy over here and the sacred over here, and then you have the profane and the secular over here. Communism is a secular worldview. I said it last time when I was on your show, Chad, that Marx famously said that communism begins where atheism begins. Mm-hmm. You either have this or you have that. In every single solitary moment, time, and period in history where we had just despotism and suffering and everything else, were systems that can be compared to, you know, if you strip away all of the frills and the shiny ornaments or whatnot, you strip it down, and you can draw a line between Karl Marx and Rousseau, and you can draw a line through all of them.
Right.
So that's why we talk about it so much, because it's the only thing that you need to understand in order to know what tyranny is, and to understand what tyranny looks like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. I only got a couple more. I try not to keep you guys too much longer. This one I thought was interesting.
There has to be a reset in how we think about economic well-being in this country. And the climate crisis actually gives us the opportunity to rethink what we value. At Next Gen, we divided up our electorate. We talked to young women, because young college-educated women said they cared about abortion when we polled them. And then more young, less college-educated young people wanted to talk about the economy. And I think that there was a lot of debate on our side about whether we talked about abortion or economy. And in my mind, it's not either or, it's both and. And that economic pain that people feel is real. And that if we're not talking about the economy, then the other side talks about the economy. And there's only one party in my mind that supports raising the minimum wage to a living wage. There's only one party that supports unions and protecting them. And there's only one party that supports taxing the rich their fair share. And so to do a better job of owning the economic future. And it is not just about making changes on the margins. I think it's about reshaping and rethinking our entire economy, and unions are going to be central to that. And that's why you have young people at the forefront of Starbucks and Amazon and these fights that are energizing young people across the country.
So she actually, believe it or not, makes a good point. I don't think she realizes it, but she does. With regard to like how we as conservatives are asleep at the wheel when it comes to really taking ownership of this economic situation that we now find ourselves in. Like, we're the ones who have the good ideas when it comes to the economy. Like, free market like enterprise is sexy. Like, it just is. Like, this idea that you get to utilize your talent or your skill to make money and to make a living for yourself, like, that's awesome. But we're asleep at the wheel, and we're not being creative enough to like really sell that idea to the youth. Rather, you have happened people like them romanticizing and glamorizing their economic policy of a humane economy, where you can do justice with the economy. And not only that, but they're vilifying this idea of being ambitious, of being wealthy, of being a go-getter. Again, it goes back to what Chuck pointed out earlier with regard to, humanity starts with everything. We have to look at everything through the eyes of the vulnerable. They're trying to guilt people into forfeiting, again, what made America exceptional: this rugged individualism, this kind of, go-getter attitude, this entrepreneurial attitude, which made America great, which made America a force to be reckoned with, at least at the ground level, because politicians have always been corrupt in the United States. But my point is like, where are the individuals on our side of the political spectrum who are glamorizing a free market enterprise economy? We're letting these people, again, take the one thing that we're supposed to be good at talking about: fiscal responsibility, entrepreneurship, and we're just giving it away. Layla, what say you?
Yeah, no, that's been the trend. That's been the trend with the climate crisis and that hoax, not advocating for the morality and, social justice behind fossil fuels, and lifting people out of poverty. We dropped the ball on that, dropped the ball on this opportunity to use and blend identity politics and transition into how you can be proud as this colored person, two-spirit, native, indigenous, decolonized human who has a business and is flourishing, and no one can stop you because you live in a free market economy. We don't transition these things over, piggyback off of them and transition them over to our benefit. We don't do that. We just, I guess they have to pick up their car from the mechanic. I don't know what they're doing. Like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're just not focused on translating these issues in a way that can really resonate, because a lot of leftists, I know personally, they still want money. They want to be able to flex on people. Like they want the Balenciaga. Okay. They want the cars. They want all of these things that come with free market prosperity. They want that. So why can't we piggyback off of that? Use all of these things without ostracizing them, because again, we're transitioning them over. You're not going to throw away their whole identity and worldview. You have to transition them over. Say, hey, I guess you are a person of color or whatever. Here as a person of color, this is how you're benefiting from a free market economy, rather than, you know, a strict quota where those evil, like those evil people of no color are keeping you out in other systems. We're letting you in because it's free and all this stuff, freedom, la la la, running through the fields, doing whatever they do. I don't know, braiding their hair, like I don't know, but that could be the commercial, just like a Roots but free market economy. I don't know, like it's insane. So yeah, dropping the ball continuously because they don't have the creative. I mean, there's literally no design thinking within the conservative realm, none at all. Like, and it's really, really unfortunate, because that's the conservative party is like 30 years behind in terms of thinking and strategy.
I would argue even further. I would say they're 60 years behind.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But no, I agree 100% with you, Chuck.
Yeah, at some point during the talk, one of them said that, I think it was the lady in the middle. She said that, young people are concerned. They want to know, why are young people worse off than their parents? And I just shook my head and listening to what she just said, and about raising the minimum wage and supporting unions and everything else. And I'm just saying to myself, man, how stupid are you? Don't you realize that the reason why the youth of today are doing worse off than their parents is because of the very same policies that you're still pushing and pursuing today? But again, I guess we aren't on the front lines, educating the young folk on how an economy works, how it functions. And, what, again, going all the way back to what Layla talked about prior, which you talked about freedom. What is freedom? What is it exactly? I think it was, I don't know if it was it Adam Smith? I think that one that said that labor was the first thing to ever have a price. Your labor, it has a price because your labor represents what you've done with your time. Your time is, in fact, your life. It's the most precious resource that you have. If you spend time working, if you spend time building something, creating something, constructing something with your mind, you deserve to be compensated for what you have done, because what you have done has taken up your time. And so when you are forced to quote Walter Williams, work for the benefit of another, that is, in fact, slavery. It's the best way to explain it. Socialism, wealth and income redistribution is slavery. If it was wrong for the white man to enslave my ancestors, then I cannot confiscate his property today and bestow it upon me, because I have to negotiate, or I have to be concerned with the welfare of my own conscience as I report back to my Heavenly Father, because again, I have to account for what I have done in my life and what I've done with this life. And if it was wrong for them, then it's wrong for me to do today. Exactly. Taxing the rich and doing this and doing that. Without the rich, where would our society be today? But I think that goes to show you that what a lot of young people and a lot of older people, for that matter, are caught up in today is that they truly believe, or they truly try to avoid the things in life that make them uncomfortable. Why should I have to work in order to eat? Why should I have to do, especially when this person has more than me and that person has this and that person has that? You know, truth be told, Chad, and I know sometimes we can talk and talk. Sometimes we come right back around to where we started, and that is, I mean, you know, without a sound, a biblical foundation, it's going to be very difficult to really, you know, get people on the path that they need to be on.
Yeah.
One of them said too, and I think it kind of relates to this monologue here that I'm on. Somebody said that one of them said, what a 19-year-old needs is different from what a 32-year-old needs. Because she said, how I get the youth, I try to figure out or get people to vote. I try to figure out where they are. I try to get them where they are.
Yeah, meet them where they are.
And meet them where they are. And a 19-year-old is different from a 32-year-old. Oh, really? So if that's the case, you're talking about all of these changes, because, you know, younger people have, you know, lower degree of impulse control and ability to set aside immediate gratification and everything else. So I wrote down here, I said, you're an adult a lot longer than you are so-called young. So why would you change society in such a way that will not prove beneficial to you throughout the better 2/3 of your life?
Yeah.
You want to change the world to suit you when you're 19, but to their very own admission, what you need when you're 32 is different from what you need when you're 19.
Yeah.
So once by the time you get 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, you know, 80 years old, you're like, oh man, I done threw my whole life away because I participated in some garbage back when I was 19, and then, you know,
I regret
live
all
to
the
regret
things
it
I
for the
did in
rest
my
of your life.
20s.
That's too much logic, though. Logic is racist. You can't do that.
Yeah, logic is racist. Yeah, it's a result of Greco-Roman philosophy and the Hellenistic period and everything else when the Greeks were raping little boys.
Yeah.
So
you know, I've never heard. Well, I think I've heard other than yourself, obviously, but I haven't heard anybody put it as eloquently as Layla. And of course, I'm going to butcher it, but I saw her on someone else's live where she said something to the effect of, like, what the left is really good at is appealing to the most frivolous elements of human behavior, the most, you know, like all the human vices, kind of what you're talking about, Chuck, working, like basically scratching to earn a living is hard work. And so to come to the man and say, look, you don't have to work. The government's going to provide for you. The government's going to, you know, as Obama put it, give you welfare. That is desirable to a lot of people whose vice is laziness.
Right.
The list goes on and on and on.
That's desirable to victims, people who make bad decisions in their life. That's going to be really perfect because there's going to be that safety net because you chose to make a bad decision. There's a safety net, so I'm okay. Of course they're going to choose that.
I saw, I think I may have been Jordan Peterson. I can't remember who it was, or maybe it was Dr. Gassad. I can't remember, but I think I heard a psychologist say that, psychology is really not my milieu, but I heard people that people are more susceptible to negative emotion than they are positive emotion. So, for example, if you put on, you know, and I know other people have done it. I've done it. You know, like you may forget you stashed some money in your pants pocket or something, and you put some old pants on you hadn't worn in a while. And it's like, oh, I got $20 in here. It's like, oh, that was awesome, right? You feel good for a minute, and then you get over it. But all right, it was a good thing. But if $20 happen to slip out your pocket and you lose it, you can't find it, you're upset a lot longer at the fact that you lost $20 than you would be if you found $20 that you didn't expect to come into. It's kind of like a psychological thing. Human beings are just more susceptible, I guess, to negative emotion, which is kind of ironic considering the fact that, you know, when we're talking about Marxism in the 21st century, people refer to it as neo-Marxism or cultural Marxism or critical theory, but critical theory as a creation of the scholars of the so-called, or not so-called, but the scholars of the Frankfurt School. What they did, in fact, was blend Marxism with Freudian psychodynamics. And so there is a psychological element there, because that's what modern day Marxism is. It is a combination of Marx and Freud.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Freud was obsessed with what? He was obsessed with sex
Mhm.
and human psychosexual development.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
No,
letting the cat out the bag a little bit, because I was telling Chad about this show I'm doing this Sunday, and I'm going to get into a lot of that. But
Oh, that's nice.
yeah.
I want to make a point of that too, because what you just mentioned is there was a study, and I should look this up again, where basically the humans are naturally going to work to avoid pain rather than seek pleasure.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
they're going to, if you give them an option, okay, if you do this, you'll avoid these negative consequences, this pain, they'll do that versus put the effort and expend the effort to get that pleasure, get something that is actually going to make them feel good rather than just neutral and not in pain.
So it's an uphill battle, guys. I don't know what we do, but we here though. We here for a reason.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I can help them. It's fine. It's fine. The pain can help them feel better. They'll feel better in the pain. I don't know. It's
And
like
acknowledging what you guys are talking about with regard to like how, and even with what old girl was talking about in the last clip, where we have to appeal to people's feelings. Like that's another thing that they're good at is feelings, and although they can't deliver on what they promise, the very fact that they're making the promises in the first place is enough for a lot of people to be swayed by their charm. Not only are conservatives or people on our side of the political spectrum not putting in the work to engage in counter propaganda, the question becomes, how do you contend with or compete with such deceptive messaging?
you appeal to people's egos. Like you just have to
Yeah.
appeal to their ego harder. Like,
Mhm.
look, if you do this somehow, it will make you better. You'll be better. Because that's all that virtue signaling is. It's just,
Yeah.
that's why they're
Yeah.
so about social justice. They want to
Yeah.
be morally better.
Yeah. Again, guys, it's the new religion. It's the new cosmology. Everyone wants to feel like they're a part of some secret a group or an exclusive group
Mm-hmm.
that they and only they have the key toward, for transitioning society into a better future. We are the ones. We are the So it's a very intoxicating feeling.
We are the ones that make a brighter day.
Yeah.
So let's start living.
Okay.
Like and one of the
Oh,
ladies,
we're gonna be singing. Oh, hold on. Martin Luther King birthday's coming out. No, I'm just kidding.
right. And look, for example, Chad, one of the people said, one of them, young people turned out in same old playbook. Young people turned out in 2020 to defeat the threat of fascism. That's what one of the
Oh yeah, that's the clip I'm about to
panel
play.
said. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, see, okay.
Well, this is the very last one because I know it's getting late.
Mhm.
So let's play that and we'll make our final comments and call it a night.
Rachel, let me pull you on that same question, just how the threats from MAGA Republicans taking away sort of these freedoms played or more broadly. In the
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a huge thing at play for young voters, especially women under 30. We had been tracking risks to abortion, just getting a baseline of how Americans were feeling, how they viewed the right to abortion at risk, and what they viewed about the Supreme Court, about their favorability. And we saw a complete 180, especially when it came to trust in the Supreme Court, their favorability and opposition to the Supreme Court's decision on Dobbs, we were seeing extreme opposition, especially from young voters. And that went as far as to the ballot. We saw in our post-election survey among 2022 voters, people that said they voted in the midterms this year, among young people and women under 30, what they said was the reason that brought them out as their main takeaway for voting for Democrats in this election was that they said that they believed that Democrats were going to keep the right to make the decision to have an abortion between a patient and their doctor and not give that decision to the government. And so I definitely think the threats, on top of landmark legislation being passed, I think the threats to abortion access, especially among a generation that has grown up with that as a guarantee for 50 years. The millennials and Gen Z have expected this. And so to just take that away, especially starting at the state level and then further at the federal Supreme Court level, young people were not just going to stand by. And we definitely saw that in this election.
Okay, so that's not the clip I thought it was, but just before that, he's talking about like, fascism and how young people have, showed up to denounce and vote against fascism and all that other nonsense. And sorry for all the jump cuts in that clip, guys. Every time there was a jump cut, she was saying, and I didn't want you guys, I didn't want you guys have to suffer through that. So that's why I took out all the ums. And it actually made her sound a little bit more smarter, even though she was, anyway, I don't want to be mean.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
No, don't be mean now.
So in that clip, she's talking about, young millennials and Gen Z, they grew up expecting to have their abortion rights intact.
Can I ask, what did I miss? I didn't go to sleep at night as a 7-year-old being like, oh, I'm so glad I can kill my baby one day. And then just like, that was what I visualized. And that was like one of my great things that I could achieve one day. Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. I missed it. Maybe it's the homeschooling. I'm sorry. But I did not sit around thinking about this greatness of being able to dismember a fetus while still inside me. That's just not something that was on the forefront of my mind. So I don't know. Women, and the fact that this is the main thing that they're looking at as the number one thing they need and want is just, it boggles my mind. It is shocking to me. And I used to be like totally neutral on abortion. I used to be like, oh, whatever. Because I was like, that's dumb. Why would you do that? Like, it sucks to be you. That was my mentality. And now I'm just like, wow, you guys really liked it that much? I had no idea. Anyway.
So me. Yeah. So, well, you talk about abortion. I can't help but, of course, think about, Margaret Sanger. And again, these characters, these figures from Sanger to Dewey, the rest of them. I mean, even Sanger made her trip to Mecca, to the Soviet Union, and she praised their approach to abortion because, see, Sanger's attitude, and I'm sure these people have the same exact attitude because their whole mindset is the Stacey Abrams mindset. Remember what she said a few months ago prior to the 2020 midterm election about abortion when asked.
Yeah, so, Blanche did a video on that. By the way, I don't mean to cut you off, but Blanche did a awesome expose on Stacey Abrams and abortion. I recommend everybody go watch it. I don't know if it's still on his page or not.
The Lion.
The Lion Queen.
Search for the Lion Queen. Make sure you use that as a podcast because staring at her gap teeth and her demonic smile for like, because he leaves her picture up.
I see see that.
The Lion
You should
Queen.
watch it. You should watch it. Let me know what you think after you watch it. But Go ahead, go
Okay.
on. I didn't mean to cut you
But,
off.
well, yeah, it was something about clearly defeating climate change. It's, you know, it's having abortions, or in essence, like not having children. And so, you know, like I said, 100 years ago, Margaret Sanger would say something similar when she talked about the Soviet Union. And she said that the Soviet Union must continue to monopolize the state, that is, monopolize and centralize its power so that all of the needs of the society will be provided for by a central government. Therefore, now this was Margaret Sanger's theory. She said that eventually there will be no need for contraceptives or abortions, because once the state has complete control, then people would be willing more so to have children, because all of the needs of the children will be provided for by the state. Now think about that logic. Feeding them, care or daycare, all of that, you know, all of that stuff. Because that is in essence why people have abortions. They're sparing the child the fate of having to live in this horrible world where they may be poor, where they may, you know, have to, you know, deal with, you know, climate change. You know, they may be, you know, too dark or something. You know, they may get too tan because right, whatever nonsense that the
You'll never be able to get those
right,
highlights
yeah,
you
you
wanted.
know, they may be body shamed or whatever.
Yeah.
So you must spare them the awful, horrible fate of life because it's just too unfair. How do you fix the unfairness? You give more and more power to the state, because the state is going to make everything fair. So from Sanger to Abrams, it has not changed.
No, it
And
hasn't.
I'm gonna get and that crazy broad that was just talking last. She also said, and I'm gonna get her. She said that, you know, she was talking about the outreach, and she said that she said, remember, she made reference to landlines, and she said, "Oh no, take that back. Very few people have landlines anymore. The only people that have landlines
Old
are
white
the
people.
few old white people."
Yeah.
And then she went on to say, we're not talking to white people. We don't have to talk to white people. This is the most queer and diverse generation in American history. And I'm going to just promise my last thing. And one thing I cannot stand, that chick in the middle with her Latinas. Listen, I don't know about y'all. Pet peeve of mine. Listen, I know your last name is Ramirez and she may speak Spanish. I don't know. But lady, it's Latina, okay? Don't try to give yourself this credence of credibility and authority by showing onlookers and listeners that you can switch accents on and off. Like that makes you, I cannot stand that smug, sanctimonious. Yes. Chad, I posted a live on my a reel on my Instagram channel, and I was talking about W.E.B. Du Bois, and somebody called themselves trying to come for me because I didn't say Du Bois. I said Du Bois. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Du Bois.
Du Bois.
It's Latina. Okay, Latina. And then you go back to the same old, you know, ragtag Midwestern accent or wherever the hell you come from. But when you say Latina, it's Latina. I cannot stand
Hey, do you listen to NPR at all?
Oh my God. That's like suicide watch. I swear every other ad is, are you ready to go? Is it time to go? Don't worry, call this number. We'll help you. Like where are these people? Like they're just gonna swing their car off. Oh no. Where did it drop? I'm the host now. But yeah, that is insane. Oh my gosh.
Nah, what about it?
Huh?
What about I was asking Chad, what about NPR?
He dropped off.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, dang, it's just us, huh?
I know, it dropped off. No,
So
but I'm glad. I love the quotes you mentioned, everything. Because it's just tonight I'm just being silly because this clip is like so insidious. I can't even. I mean, once I saw that Monarch thing, I switched. I can't deal with reality in the same way anymore. It's like,
Well, yeah. Well, I told Chad, I said, man, you know, the whole conversation is about an hour long. I probably only got 30 minutes in, and I couldn't take it no more. I had to cut it off. The white lady, she was like Chad said, he had to edit her up because she was just so, I mean, she did not belong on that stage at all. I mean, all three of them, you know, and it sucks that, this guy, I mean, he just, you know,
They're just outright.
He was just sworn in, right?
They hate MAGA. They hate
to
MAGA
Congress.
Republicans. They hate the idea of free market and the American principles. Like they're literally, that's all it is they're about. But I wanted to also bring up my two favorite quotes. I'm not sure if Chad is going to be able.
He just texted me. He said he doesn't know what happened. He said, I guess they pulled the plug.
All right. Well, I'm just going to close this. Then I guess we'll just close. It still says it's live. So.
Yeah, I'm talking to you guys. I'm speaking to you. I got the show up on my desktop in front of me, and we're still going. I don't know
well, I don't know if he's going to come in, but I'm going to share my two favorite quotes because you got to say all of your quotes during the whole show. My favorites were, we have to, this is from the Latina with her tamales. Oh, sorry. We have to understand their pain points so we can empower them with progressive policies. You see that? See how insidious that is? We're going to understand their problems so we can give them something to help them feel empowered, because ultimately it's just driving more power to the state and less to them. And then the other one was from Mr. Cabbage Patch Barack Obama. They go to community colleges, to not just like the universities. He was talking about with organizing and outreach. You go to the community college. Yes, they're dumb. Whatever. He didn't say that, but basically they're implying that. You go to the community college to communicate with people who live locally. Great, that makes sense. But then he said this. Then they use that as a tool to reach the parents. So if you think about it, you're going to a regular university, not most of the people there are coming from all over the country, right? Like if you're going to a major university, they're not in the community. The people don't live there necessarily. The people's parents are somewhere, 100 miles away, 200, whatever. And he was just they look at every single physical aspect of their campaigns. Like, how do we get to the community? And then how do we get the inroads to these people's parents because they live down the street? It's really disturbing. And then the last one before Chad goes is they hijack art and cultural events to talk to the youth.
Yeah.
See this, and you see this on social media all the time. They have at concerts like Ariana Grande. There's a group she partnered with, and at all of her concerts, they had people signing up to vote. So they go to the parties and propagandize the kids there. So what better way? They're in a good mood. They're happy. Yeah, we want to make sure we have abortion rights. Yeah, let me sign up to vote. So anyway, those are my three favorite quotes.
I'm not sure why Zoom kicked me off my own live, but
I know.
Like that was kind of weird. Like it just said, "No, you're done here."
It's our show now, Chad. Get out of here, man. We don't need you.
Are you talking about
students? It's hilarious, man. He tell you got that Obama internet access. You got that Obama internet access.
Yeah,
he climbing, man.
Yeah, he is climbing. I live in a kind of rural / urban area, so but no, like, so were you talking about Maxwell Ford, or what is it, Frost? Which it's weird that his last name is Frost, but that's neither here nor there. But were you talking about when he was talking about like, oh, we got to go to parties and stuff and campaign?
Yeah,
we got to go to like the art scene and all the different things.
Basically hijack culture events and art events and just like propaganda as the kids there.
And I wrote that one down too, Layla, when we talked about art and culture, because immediately, once again, I going back to my repository in my mind of certain historical references, again, you know, art in the literary crowd in the Ivy League was extremely important in terms of the new left, when it came to the new left. And, you know, literary deconstructionists like Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida. I mean, art and culture was, I mean, they pretty much single-handedly took over the entire universities, even in, you know, venturing into the hard sciences. And, you know, that's why we see even science, technology, engineering, and math is falling prey to this critical theory nonsense. And now it's because of the, you know, the literary folk in the English departments and whatnot, you know? So, yeah.
I had a question for you, Chuck. And I was going to ask this for you before I got kicked off my own live, but whenever these people like are talking to you, just like I'm talking to you now, and then all of a sudden some Spanish word comes up, and then they go out of their way to pronounce with Mexican dialect that word. Do you think that they're trying to like virtue signal, or do you think that they are literally?
I think, I think it's one of two things, or maybe both. I think they're virtue signaling, and again, I think they also think that it makes them sound more authoritative. I think it's a exercise in sanctimony. I think they're just pretty much saying, hey, you know, I know how this is supposed to sound if I were, you know, I had a Spanish accent, or, you know, I mean, speak Spanish, but, you know, people speak Spanish.
Okay. So are you talking about actual like Hispanic people doing that, or white liberals doing that?
No. Like I said before, I'm looking at her, and she probably has some kind of Hispanic heritage, and because, you know, just by looking at her, and I think her last name was Ramirez, but I'm saying when she speaks, she doesn't have an accent at all. I'm saying, like, if you just speak the way you speak, again, I think it is an example of virtue signaling, and I also think it's an example of someone just trying to put on airs for, you know, trying to make themselves either sound smart, or perhaps maybe they're trying to pander, like you said. But it's just one of those things that she really gets on my nerves. Like, it's Latina, it's not Latina. Like, stop it, because you don't speak that way, right? I mean, if you have an accent, if you sound like freaking Rosie Perez, if you speak like that, you speak like that. Do you?
Yes.
So for crying out loud, man, you can't come up here sounding like, you know, some whatever, and then all of a sudden, you know, it comes to the word Latina and it turns into Latina. And then you go back to talking normally, or how you normally talk. It's ridiculous. It's just stupid, man. It's stupid, man.
Whenever he said that he was an artist, I wonder what kind of art he does. Like, everybody's an artist, right? I guess.
Yeah. Everybody's an artist.
Everybody's a singer.
Mm-hmm.
He might be a rapper or something. Anyway, well, cool. Layla, you said you were gonna sing before.
So earlier today, I'm gonna tell you, I would close off with this joke then. Earlier today, I was like reminding my my fiance that it's the long weekend. It's the long weekend. And then he's like, oh, it's Martin Luther King. And then the next thing I started humming like, and he's like, are you humming Negro spirituals now that you're thinking about Martin Luther King? I was like, stop it. This is my heritage. This is I was like, down by the river.
Okay, so how
totally
so how are y'all celebrating Martin Luther King Day? We'll start with you, Chuck.
Shoot, man, doing nothing, man. It's gonna be it's like any other day. Just get some rest,
barbecue some ribs,
go to the gym. I don't know. I don't think I'm barbecuing. I don't got no plans, man. I actually got the whole week off next week. I took some personal time, just so I could needed a break from work. Nice. So just gonna get some rest. You know, go to the gym, something like that. You know, I'm chilling, man. I don't know. Maybe post some social media content in commemoration, you know, and say something.
Oh my God, no.
Say something subversive, like I always do, like around Juneteenth or something, you know, like every Juneteenth, I take it upon
Those are
myself
the best lives.
to remind people what was really going on here, you know, with the red, black, and the green, you know, celebrating this faux movement, this faux Pan-African movement that was conjured up in Europe. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. What about you, man?
Well, just so you know, Martin Luther King's favorite food of choice was ribs. I'm not trying to be funny, but that's literally what he enjoyed the most. And in fact, they said when he died, because he ate so much pork, although he was in his late 30s, he had the heart of a 60-something-year-old. So,
Oh my God.
yeah.
So, he probably, might not have
He was
lived that long
sweating
anyway.
in those suits. Oh my God. The meat sweats.
Stop, Layla. Stop.
No, that's a horrible image to have. No, I think that that's amazing. I mean, I don't think he's such a terrible person. And it's just sad that, you know, if anybody looks into history, you know, you can see Gandhi, you can see all these movements, and it just makes sense. But, you know, deep down, I feel like if Malcolm X didn't really like him, how bad could he have been? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't know. It's long life. But yeah, happy Martin Luther King Day. Down by the
Happy Martin Luther
river.
and the thing is, like, people say all the time that, oh, he was a good man. We all sin. We're all sinners. Yeah, he may have been, you know, a Marxist, but we all sin. It's like, look, that's not even the point of what I'm trying to make. It's like, here you have a person who is placating as a Christian pastor, but what he's selling isn't the Christian faith, nor anything from the Bible for that matter. He's intentionally and deliberately being deceptive to push an agenda and an ideology that has proven to be detrimental to everywhere it's been tried in the world. And so it's not a matter of whether or not, you know, he slept around on his wife a few times, which he did, or that he was addicted to cocaine, which he was. Like, none of those things are being argued. What is being argued instead is that he pushed a demonic ideology under the guise of the Christian faith. And the Bible talks about, you know, not everybody should profess to be teachers, because teachers will be judged more harshly. So that's something that is worth taking into consideration.
Wow.
So.
Wow. I didn't know
Anyway,
he was a cocaine addict. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was.
That's
and he was
awesome.
addicted to prostitutes as well. But we'll
He
end it
seemed
there.
calm for a cocaine addict. Anyway.
Some people, I mean, have you seen Flight starring Denzel Washington?
Yeah. Well, I thought he was a drunk in Flight. It was cocaine.
No,
too?
he was a drunk, but cocaine would help him like get back to normal.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. So was Dr. King, because somebody was telling me that Dr. King was said that it was white women that he had a thing for. I mean, there's a reason why I'm asking. Well, Chad, why are you doing? There's a reason why I'm asking, though, bro. He can listen, white women. I don't care if
it was Filipinos. Please.
Oh my God.
He was the first passport, bro.
What has this devolved into? I'm seriously, Chad. I'm asking you because I know that you know a lot about the biography of King, and you know some of the shadier things that people, you know, don't really shed a lot of light on. And I heard somewhere, I haven't verified it myself. Of course, everyone has heard about Dr. King and his adultery, but was it for the white women? Because you said prostitutes. I'm saying was white women a thing that he was into? Blanche said he heard it was white women, and there's a reason why I'm asking, because I was getting ready to.
No, so he was into all kinds of tell. So what he would do, according to somebody who and I've heard this from numerous people actually, who knew people who were who came across Martin Luther King at some point during his ministry, right? Where he would go on these speaking engagements and raise money for what it was they were trying to do. And he would get a literal bag full of cash, and he'll come home or come back to the hotel and toss that cash on the bed and say, go get the hookers. And his assistant, who was Abernathy, would literally go find the local prostitutes and bring them back to the hotel. And they didn't quite care what color these prostitutes were. You know, they were just interested in having a good time. And apparently there was a lot of recordings of these escapades that they would have.
Yeah.
That were collected by the FBI.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Wow.
But no, so we know that to be the case because of the FBI recordings, but that's actually verified once again. Somebody actually, and I don't know if this person DM'd you as well, Chuck, but somebody DM'd me where his dad was like a bell, what is it, a bellhop that works at like hotels, confirmed having seen this with his own eyes. So, you know, it's the other thing is like, for me, like anything that I do on a professional level in terms of the documentaries we're putting out or anything that I write, like I never mention anything having to do with that part of Martin Luther King's life. I'm not as interested in that because when it comes to that kind of stuff, like, yes, the argument can be made, we all sin, we all have our vices. And so I'm not interested in that as much as I am, again, in using the posture as clergy or a man of the cloth, not to push the Christian faith that you're tasked with pushing, but rather you're pushing a demonic satanic, which Marxism is, ideology. That to me is like, it's blasphemous. And as we know, blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is an unforgivable sin. So
and let me just add layer, Chad, just so clear. It's not, I'm trying to get all tabloidy up in here, but just to kind of bring it back to what we do. The reason why I asked, in all seriousness, all jokes aside, to kind of get back to, some of the points that I've hit on and kind of really has been your crusade recently, which is to expose the whole Black struggle movement in its various faces. To go back to a man who's very a key source in all of this, and that is Manning Johnson. Manning Johnson said, I believe in a Senate testimony before the House on Internal Security, which was sort of like the second phase of the House on American activities in the 1950s. During his testimony, Manning Johnson, he knew and understood that Black communists in the United States were being controlled by their white communist masters. And what he said they would do was, and this is why I asked you, were they white? What did he have a thing for white women? Was because according to the congressional testimony of Manning Johnson, the white communists would send the white male communists would send white female communists to spy on on the Black communists to make sure that they stayed in line. And this is what the Comintern referred to as sexual politics or sex politics. And so once again, kind of politics. Something like that, prostitute something like that. And so that's why I asked, because it kind of reminded me, if in fact, and the evidence is there beyond the preponderance of thereof, that King was a Marxist. I wouldn't go as far as say that he was an actual card-carrying, as they say, card-carrying member or fellow traveler of the Communist Party, but considering that revelation from Manning Johnson, it's just
you have
very
to understand.
Curious to me.
And it wasn't just Manning Johnson, it was a slew of other Blacks as well who were invited to Soviet Union, Russia, who were taught about the glories of communism and then sent back to the United States to then disseminate and romanticize that information to their Negro peers. And so I don't think that we study enough of the hearings that were taking place in America at the behest of McCarthy, because we've been, like our generation, we've been conditioned to believe that McCarthyism is such a boogeyman word, and that McCarthy himself is one of the most evil men in the United States. When in reality, a lot of what they were uncovering is really something to behold. And so Martin Luther King's rise to popularity is downstream of so-called McCarthyism. And so even though the media was able to do a fantastic job in demonizing Joe McCarthy, even though they were able to do a fantastic job of that, and communists were free to, like Joan Baez and others, even though they were free to like kind of tout their Marxist kind of leanings throughout the 60s going into the 70s, a large portion of the United States still were very hostile to communism. And so Martin Luther King and his ilk knew better and to even give a hint to being communists. In a book called Where Do We Go From Here, I think it was called, Martin Luther King dedicates a chapter to denouncing communism. And in it, he talks about how he can't be a communist because he's a Christian. But it's interesting because when you read what he said and the reasons that he gives, it's eerily similar to the same argument, almost word for word, made by none other than Robert McCracken. In other words, Martin Luther King plagiarized McCracken to explain his own denouncement of communism. And so the question then becomes, if you are genuinely against communism, why not use your own words to denounce it? Why plagiarize somebody else to denounce something that you say that you're against? If I'm apologetic for something, or if I'm renouncing or denouncing something, in order to not come off as disingenuous, I'm going to use my own words to explain and articulate my denouncement of that thing. I'm not going to plagiarize and copy what somebody else said and insert that as if it's my own, because that's disingenuous. And it's also important to note, and I advise people to watch the film Anarchy USA. It was produced in 1966 by G. Edward Griffin, where he exposes a lot of the Marxist influences of the civil rights movement. He points out that in Fidel Castro's rise to power in Cuba, every step of the way, Fidel Castro rejected and denounced any claims of him or accusations of him being a communist. It wasn't until he actually became or came into power where he finally admitted to being a communist. So denouncing or rejecting accusations of being a communist is par for the course when it comes to, fellow travelers and communists and things of this nature. And so a lot of people, a lot of intellectuals, a lot of scholars, a lot of conservatives will not go as far as to say that Martin Luther King was a Marxist. But again, when you look at a lot of things he said, a lot of things that he wrote, a lot of things that he advocated for, I mean, there's no difference. There's no distinguishable difference between Marxism and what the man was advocating for. Again, we're told that he was a reverend, as you mentioned earlier. But yet, if you look at all of the sermons that he wrote, all of the sermons that he preached that are on footage, and I went over literally every second of every minute of every hour of Martin Luther King footage that's in existence. Not one sermon where he's actually preaching the gospel, where he's preaching, or calling people to repentance in Christ. Wow. Not one. But what I do find is countless of hours of activism, of Marxian-esque activism, where he's very strategically and very cunningly pushing for this kind of social justice, again, that has its roots in communism. And so, yes, when it comes to his escapades of, all the sex escapades and stuff that, he was involved, I would venture to say that probably a great number of those women were, spies. But it's difficult to say. For me, I lean more on what he actually said and what he actually did than that information, personally speaking. So
Yeah, no,
anyway,
you're right.
I know the hour is late. Layla looks tired.
Yeah, I'm about to. Yeah, I know it must be even later there. Gosh.
Yeah, I think it's 1 o'clock where.
Yeah, I woke up, I think, at 3 a.m. So
1:45. Yeah. 1:41 where I am. Yeah, Layla, you gotta jump in and stop me and Chad because we'll be here till the sun comes up.
no, it's really nice to be able to sit in, and I appreciate this. I like the conversation. I think we got some really good clips, really good
Yeah.
snippets. It's
Yeah.
really nice to be able to talk about these heavy subjects and still laugh. Like, we got to be able to do that.
Next time it will be a smoother start. I'm just gonna go ahead and use Zoom because there's no reason why after all these times I've gone live, I should still be having technical difficulties. Like that's foolish.
Yeah,
So.
I got Ecamm, and I'm really
Mhm.
impressed with it. It's really cool. There's so
Mhm.
many features related to it. So yeah, I want to use it myself because you can use it on Instagram too.
Oh, really? That must be a new
Yeah.
feature.
Yeah, it's a new feature because they give you the stream keys now, so you can use it. I did
Nice.
it today. But anyway, this was awesome
All right,
conversation.
you all have a
Thank
wonderful
you so
night.
much for having me join.
All right.
Yeah. Have a great long weekend. Try not to
Take some
party like
ribs.
MLK.
Yes,
Take care.
man.
All right.
Long live the Monarch kids or whatever they call.
I know
Radical.
the programming. Oh my God, it's gonna be haunting me.
We'll
Watch the
look
next
to seeing your
4
content on
live,
them.
the next 4 reels I make. Do you see this? Do you see? That's it.
All right. Peace.
All
Happy
right.
MLK Day.